Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st. And my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Rob Delaney is the author of the memoir, A Heart That Works, which is now a New York Times bestseller. Rob is a comedian, actor, writer, and the author of a previous memoir, Rob Delaney, Mother, Wife, Sister, Human, Warrior, Falcon, Yardstick, Turban, Cabbage. He's widely known as the BAFTA-winning co-creator and co-star of the critically acclaimed Amazon Prime comedy Catastrophe. Welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss your absolutely beautiful memoir, A Heart That Works.
Thank you so much for having me, Zibby.
Your story is so unbelievably moving, beautiful, angry, raw, open, loving. It had like all the things that you look for in a story. And I'm sorry you had to live it, but as a book, it was the most moving, transformative experience. So well done on that front.
Thank you.
Can you tell listeners a little about your story and why you decided to write it?
Sure. So my wife and I had two boys, a little less than 2 years apart in age. And we were enjoying that so much that we decided to have a third kid. Also turned out to also be a boy. He was born a little more than 2 years after the first one. So we had a bunch of little boys running around the place. And a little before Henry, our third, turned 1, he got quite sick. And we didn't know what it was. It took a while to figure out. And it turned out to be a brain tumor right next to his brainstem. And they took the tumor out, which created some pretty significant disabilities for him. And then he had chemo and was in the hospital for 14 months. Then he came home, and then the cancer returned. And at that point, they couldn't do anything, and he died a little bit before he turned 3. So the book is about the before, during, and after of that. What that was like, what it felt like. And that's it. You know, in writing the book, people have said things like they felt things like hope or faith. And that's not why I wrote the book. It's up to the reader how they feel. There's no prescriptions in it. There's no, this is how you survive this. I just wanted to show people what it was like. And that's what I tried to do.
Wow. Well, you absolutely showed people what it was like. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
It's horrific. The whole thing. I really feel the way you wrote it, we all could live it through. Anyone who has not experienced this will feel so viscerally what you felt in the way that you wrote it. In fact, I've referenced several times, because as I mentioned, I read this when the galley first came to me. I've referenced it several times, your passage about why you decided to write it and why you even ask yourself in the writing why you wrote it. So I was wondering, can I just read this? Can I read this paragraph? He wrote this really awful, just disturbing, not awful and disturbing, awful for you and disturbing paragraph about what happens once your child has died. And then you said, why do I feel compelled to talk about it, to write about it, to disseminate information designed to make people feel something like what I feel, what my wife feels, what my other sons feel? Done properly, it will hurt them. Why do I want to hurt people? And I do. Did my son's death turn me into a monster? That's certainly possible. It doesn't sanctify you. Things get broken. Maybe it's because I write and perform for a living that I can't help but try to share or communicate the biggest, most seismic event that has happened to me. The truth is, despite the death of my son, I still love people, and I genuinely believe, whether it's true or not, that if people felt a fraction of what my family felt and still feels, they would know what this life and this world are really about. So beautiful.
Well, thank you. I mean, and yeah, that's a pretty good thesis for the book, I think. And I just didn't want to. I figured the kindest thing that I could do, rooted in love, would be to tell people how horrible it was and what it did to us. I really felt it seemed false to me when people, or if not false, not helpful, if somebody tells you years after a tragedy, things like, but the sun still came up and, we worked through it. And I didn't like things that told you that. I'd rather be shown it. I'd rather notice it myself in seeing a bereaved parent or sibling or somebody who lost their spouse when they're in the early blush of romance and love and with young kids or something, the really awful ones. I'd rather have that person tell me about what they went through honestly, observe them, through the telescope of a well-written book if possible, and see like, yeah, maybe they are okay, and like wonder, are they, have it be a more intimate, let the reader decide if I'm all right or not. There's no value in me telling you that, you know what I mean? It's better for you to maybe see it or not, but then I've done my job of showing you something you never wanted to see, but hopefully helping people understand it better,
Well, otherwise, I mean, people can't possibly feel what they don't know. Right? And then they do you a disservice by asking overly simplistic questions that aren't helpful to you too, right?
Yeah.
How are you? How are you feeling?
Yeah. I think that's a fine question. How are you? If you're prepared for the answer and the person can take a deep breath and really tell you. So that's fine. How are you? Is not a stupid question, in my opinion. But, my wife and I would be frustrated to the point of desperation when we could tell that people were like, aren't they over it by now? Or like, it would be convenient for me if they were over it, if I didn't have to think about that. And so the part of the book really comes from that, going through stuff like that,
And you didn't just have to cope with having two other boys and a sick child for a while. And then you also lost your brother-in-law to suicide, which was a horrific part of the book also. Can you talk about that?
So while Henry was in the hospital getting chemo, my young, beautiful, vivacious brother-in-law died by suicide. He was felled by depression, and it was really, really awful. So months before Henry died, my brother-in-law died, and he had a 2-year-old daughter with my sister, who's my only sibling. So my sister and I were united in this horrible kind of tandem grief, and not, it wasn't like one of our elderly parents had died. We'd like our parents to live forever, but that's not going to happen, or a grandparent or a coworker that we had lunch with a couple times a week. It was big, devastating deaths. So I spoke to my sister on the phone this morning when she was on her way to work, and we had a nice talk. We always do. So we're able to help each other in a really beautiful way. It's crazy that happened to both of us at essentially the same time, but we love each other very much and have been able to help each other a lot. So there's certainly beauty in our relationship and pain.
Wow. It's great you have each other, but
big time.
Perhaps not in this way.
I know.
I feel like at times you were hard on yourself in the book for how you were disappointing others. There's a whole passage about you're being a bad husband. Can I read another paragraph? Is that okay?
Please. Yeah, I love to hear about that.
Let me tell you how bad a husband you are. Let me just remind you.
Sure.
He said, I really, really don't like seeing this written down. I was a bad husband and a very, very good cog in the TV machine. To explain, I can only offer that I recognize this was my shot at age 37 to solidly break into the biz, and I falsely assumed that to do so, I should or could hit pause on my family responsibilities.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite any and all readers to slap themselves at this point on my behalf, to underline with a physical sensation that one cannot hit pause on family responsibilities. It cannot be done without inflicting genuine damage. And genuine damage I did inflict, all while pretending to play a loving, attentive partner and dad on a TV show that would be advertised on buses that would drive by and splash my wife, who'd be pushing a double stroller while pregnant, to go buy diapers and toilet paper for me and my children to use as part of our respective shitting processes. I luxuriate in shame.
Yeah. 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 So I did a TV show for 4 seasons called Catastrophe. And the first 2 seasons of that show, I was a major workaholic. And I feel like, I'm imagining, it's not up to me, but I feel like the casual reader will be like, well, yeah, I get it. You get your chance to get a TV show that you write and produce on the air. You got to work your ass off, and I did. But I did it at a time when my wife had very kindly and generously agreed to move to another country where the sun sets at around 2 p.m. Throughout the winter. And we didn't know anybody. She had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and was pregnant. And then I was like, see ya. I got work to do. And so it, again, I think one can examine my behavior during that time and understand it, but it did hurt her and it did damage our relationship. And I talk about that in the book. And after we made the first 2 seasons of Catastrophe in rapid succession with no break in between, my wife said that she would divorce me if I continued to work in the same manner. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I don't want that. I want to be married to you and remain married to you. So yeah, I will change how I operate. And so she kind of shocked me into learning how to work smarter rather than harder. And you kind of took my hands off a lot of other aspects of the show and just worried about the script with my writing partner, Sharon Horgan. And, I was like, you know what? I'll let the wardrobe department worry about the wardrobe. And, location scouting. Yeah, I'll let the location scout do that. And so that was great. That was an amazing lesson for me because I realized I don't even care about the other stuff. I just thought I had to do it all and I didn't. And it's funny because I like the 3rd and 4th seasons of the show best, the ones where I let everybody just do their job. So then, but not long at all after beginning to implement those changes, Henry got sick. So I sort of had the double whammy of my wife, whom I love desperately, saying it's time for a change, with an ultimatum. And then my son getting sick and then dying. It made me very much change the way that I look at my career and want my career to serve my life and my family and not vice versa.
And is that how you feel now? The way you, more
Big
so,
time.
less so, same?
Big time.
Yeah.
I did a TV show recently with Vince Vaughn, and he would play a game where he would try to imagine jobs that I would accept, because we were talking about my criteria for jobs now, which is like, if it shoots near my house, I'll do garbage. If it's far away, I probably won't do it unless it's really, they can really, shoot me efficiently and it's a short thing. So he was like, all right, okay, here's the job offer. You're going to play a pedophile. And I was like, I'm listening. He's like, whoa, you're not. I'm like, hey, if it shoots near my house, I'll do a franchise about pedophiles, but so time is more important to me now than career status or money, because I know that people's lives are finite. My son lived for 2 years and 9 months. So it's not lip service. We all understand that, we could write it down on a piece of paper. I won't live forever, and neither will my kids. Nor, even in the best case scenario, they won't be children forever. They'll become adults. One hopes. One of mine didn't. And so now my understanding of the value of time has changed very dramatically. So now I like to do one thing well at a time. I don't have to do 10 things at once. And I am happier due to that.
Wow. So is there any other way where I know you desperately want people to feel what you felt and hear it and experience it and try to internalize. And I think, I'm a huge reader of memoir. I read memoirs all the time, and I have gone through a lot of loss myself. What is it about trying to let people know, this sort of compulsion to like shake people up and be like, wait, you're like going through life and you don't realize that these bad things can happen. Like, I have to show you, like, what is it? And do you think it works? Like, do you think people can adequately get it until they've experienced something horrific?
So the short answer is no, of course you can. And that's okay. They're not deficient. My book isn't like deficient at not being able to make people understand it bone deep and then carry it with them. So it's okay that my book won't change lives. It's okay that somebody can't jump into the skin of another, but we can sort of open our hearts to take a better look and remove some barriers of behaviors that don't serve us and understand. For example, if I tell you something that I'm having a hard time with and you bat it away, then I'm a little wounded. I'm going to be less open with others. If I tell you that and you're like, okay, God, that's got to be difficult. Wow, really? Don't envy that. Christ, that's got to be, and you don't even have a solution, but you just let it land. Then great. I've said that. It kind of, a problem shared is a problem halved, It's like a proverb. And that's not, there's no new ideas in my book, but then I have a better day and you've done me a favor. So you feel good, So just let people feel what they feel. You don't have to fix them. You can't. Maybe take a little humility there and realize, well, what can I say to fix them? I'm sure if I thought of the right thing in my amazing toolkit, I'm sure I could fix them with some words. That's crazy.
Well, it's like when anyone's upset, it's just standing by their side, giving the hugs that they needed.
Exactly.
Do you feel like you've read books that have made you feel this deeply? Or when you were writing your book, did you look to other books and think like, okay, I want to do it like this person? Or did you just say like, I'm just going to do it and let's see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I name books in my book that were very helpful to me with grief. Frankenstein is probably first and foremost. That's a very special book written by, a once in a century genius, Mary Shelley, and who understood grief better than even I do. And that's a very
Joan Didion too.
Joan Didion, yeah. Nicholas Streeton wrote a graphic novel called Billy, Me, and You about the death of her 2-year-old son, and that book is gorgeous. That's the kind I like. I would like duct tape that to myself if I couldn't. I don't know if I were wandering through the forest and was like, I'd really love to talk to somebody about my son, and I couldn't. Then I would just tape the book to myself, and I'd feel better. The End of the Affair by Graham Greene is a very special book about really the miracle of love and the depth of what we learn when we lose someone and the pain and the fury. It's such a deliciously angry book that helps more than somebody being like, I don't know, giving you some chamomile tea bullshit, quote or whatever. So yeah, those are some great examples of books that helped me a lot and I readily recommend.
Amazing. Yeah. The Year of Magical Thinking was amazing. I know you talked about that towards the end. Of course, you're so funny. You're like, I mean, you have a sense of humor about everything, even when it's like horrific. So, which is great. Tell me about how all the ways you're giving back now as a result, and how you're donating the proceeds and the charities you support and all of that.
Oh yeah. So any money I make from this book I'm giving it to hospices for kids, and I've already given a bunch as it comes in. I just give it to them because, well, first of all, I wouldn't want to make any money from a book about my son who died. I wouldn't want to drive around in that like car I was bought with that money. That would feel disgusting. And so giving the money to kids' hospices, because it's crazy how far a dollar can go in a hospice, like let's say literally $100. I'm not saying don't give money to cancer research. do your money, do what you want with it. But it's not likely that it'll be that $100 that cures cancer, whereas $100 given to a kid's hospice is going to pay for hours of like a music therapist to come to a hospital and make a kid who is dying laugh, smile, and dance in their parents' arms, so I want to help people who aren't going to survive. I want to help kids who are dying enjoy their final days, months, weeks, because we benefited from kids' hospices. And so far in my 45 years of life, I just haven't seen, I guess I have a sort of cavalier attitude about money. So many people misuse it so catastrophically, and use it to enslave people and really do disgusting things with it. And so I just hadn't seen just money used in a way that was so instantly effective. So I thought, if this book is going to make any money, I'm going to give it to people who can take it and run with it and effectively, substantively change children's lives and their families' lives. And then those kids are going to die anyway. You know what I mean? So yeah, I want to help the people who medicine can't help.
So beautiful. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened. I loved your book so much. And
thank you.
Thank you for sharing it with the world.
My pleasure, Zibby. Thanks.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.